Hello, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Mind Monkeys. Welcome to Mind Monkeys. What a wonderful morning we're going to have. Thank you for joining us in Mind Monkeys. Welcome, Bananas Optional. This is the regular LinkedIn live stream that we do where we name, explain, and reframe the most common hesitations that get in the way of the successes we deserve. I'm Mark. I'm your host as we embark on raw, honest, irreverent, and important conversations designed to normalize the fears that we each face at work and at play in order to help you, our dear listener, our amazing listener, reframe the perspective around those stories that you've created for yourselves that have been feeding those monkeys. Now, I'm just making sure that we are live. Hopefully we are live, but I would very much like to welcome my amazing guest for this month's episode, which is the gorgeous Daniel Brunetto. Daniela is, let me tell you a little bit about him before we get going. Daniel is a career coach and consultant who helps professionals that are either seeking or adapting to changes in their careers. And with more than 10 years experience in international organizations in Brussels, Daniela helps people who feel stuck, lost, or on the verge of burnout find a job or career that finally fits them and not vice versa. Daniela, Danny, am I okay to call you Danny? Is that still good?
Yes, please. It's going to be the easiest thing to do. Thank you for this
Gorgeous.
lovely introduction.
You're very welcome. How are you doing? You've had an interesting week already.
I've had an interesting week already, that's true. And normally I would be in a different place with a different background and setup, but actually in Madrid visiting my cousin for the weekend. So you see a little bit of a different setup for my usual calls. And it's sunny, which is not at the moment in Brussels. So I'm very happy to escape.
Sunny is good. Sunny is good. We had gales last night. I was driving back very
Mm.
late, and it was horrendous. So yes, a bit of
Oh,
sunshine does the world of good. So
yes.
thank you anyway. Thank you for dialing in. It's just a delight to have this conversation with you. I know we're going to have a lot of fun. Let's begin as I begin with all of these kind of episodes and
Mhm.
to invite you to meet the monkeys. So again, for our listener out there, just to sort of reaffirm that when we say mind monkeys, we're talking about those limiting beliefs, those little whispers inside our own heads that kind of get in our own way. And in your work as a sort of consultant career coach, what would you say are the most common or frequent monkeys that kind of pop up and make themselves known to either you or even to the people that you serve?
I'm going to be, let's say, I'm going to use one of the most common in my clients, but also one that was the same for me when I decided to become a coach. And is something that you know very well as well, which is the question, am I good enough?
Yeah.
It's a recurrent question that I get from clients, and it's something that limits them from the options and the possibilities they can see in applying some changes in their current job or changing completely the job or career in general. And I had the same problem. When I decided to become a coach after my burnout, basically reigniting what has always been my interest in helping people and supporting them in their own journey, then I realized, well, will I be enough? I've never done this. And then I realized actually I had already all the knowledge that I wanted and all the capacity and the skills. And for those that I didn't have, I just studied for a year and I knew that I could learn just focusing on that what the skills that were needed in order to become a coach. So even just with this little idea, this little story, I mean, there's more, of course, of my journey, but even just with this and what happens with my clients when they decide, oh, maybe I want to change my job or career. But the first hesitation is always, will I be good enough? I've invested so much, the usual sunk cost fallacy that we know, in this career. Will I be able to be as good as this one in a new job or a new career? So this is one of the most common. And then, of course, I mean, we always talk about the four fears, but they are also present in my work and they were present in my life, as you know. But one of the most common is also the money. People think I will change my job or change completely career as I did. Will I get enough money? And I had the same problem. I had the same limiting belief. I will not earn enough money being a coach as when I was working in international organizations. Well, I'm the proof that that's the limiting belief. We're here and we're talking about it, and this is the proof. Of course, there are some life constraints that we always have to put in place, put in consideration, and that's different for different people. But those are just monkeys, and you don't want to feed them. So, of
You brought the bananas. They were
course I
optional,
did.
but I'm grateful that you brought the bananas. Danny, let me just expound on some of the things you've said there. So the money thing, I think, is really interesting because I wonder, and again, just from the experience of those people who sort of sat in front of you,
Mhm.
how intrinsically linked is that sort of relationship with money that we have in terms of as you were saying, if I'm not earning the sort of money that I need to earn, that equates to I'm not being good enough.
Yes. At the same time, there's one element that is always missing in this kind of equation, which is you're getting X amount of money for the work that you're doing, but what are you actually paying that with? And for people like me who went into burnout and people who are on the verge of burnout, you're paying that with your health, you're paying
Yeah,
that with your relationships and
yeah,
your energy and your passions as well. Some of the clients that I had, they reignited some of their passions that they had completely forgotten because of what the job that they were doing. So in the end, you're running a deficit because yes, you're getting X amount of money in that sense, and that's good. I'm not telling people to live with 500 euros, but at the same time, what are you paying that with?
yeah.
Is that your life? Is that your relationships? If you have problems in your personal life because of work, you gotta put that as well in the equation. So this is normally what happens when you link money and your sense of worth in a way, and also in the sense of, am I good enough? Without my job, who will I be? It happens so many times when people in English is. I'm pretty much interested in when we use different words. I do coaching in three languages mainly: English, French, and Italian.
Yeah.
So it's difficult to explain it in English because it's difficult to say I'm doing a work instead of I am a doctor, for example, let's say, or in our case, I am a coach, right? You're using the verb to be.
Mm-hmm.
In a way, you're identifying yourself with your job, which is the most difficult thing to dismantle in a way. What will I be without my job? That's one of the biggest questions that I also receive from my clients.
Oh, I like that. That's very powerful. You're absolutely right. In three languages as well. I mean, that's impressive. But the fact that you have that kind of that breadth and are approaching, yes, the words that we use and the
Because
things we
words,
tell ourselves.
as sorry, I interrupted you, but
Okay.
words create worlds. And
Yeah.
as we know, of course, we studied these things, but words create our thoughts and then
Yeah.
our emotions, everything is connected, right? So if in your language you are identifying yourself with your job, because that's what your grammar is telling you to do, basically,
Yeah.
then it's going to be more difficult. In Italian, it's a bit easier. You can say, I am a doctor, I am a coach, but you can also say that you're doing something. It's the same thing. The easiest example is when in English you say, I'm wrong. In Italian, you say, I made a mistake.
Yeah.
Once you realize that, that is already, you're putting a boundary between you and the mistake and what you've done. So that sort of disconnection between what you do, well, who you are and what you do, it's easier in another language. So that's why in with my clients who speak English, it's a little bit more, I wouldn't say complicated, but it takes a little bit more time to explain this. While in Italian, it's just easier, for example, but even in French. So even this, the use of language, with what we when we describe what we do, who we are, that's another one of the locks that I say that keep us in our golden cage with a good salary, but then we're miserable. So when we are locked in this cage and we think, I am my job because I am doing this because that's what I'm doing 8 hours a day for 5 days a week.
Yeah.
Well, 8 hours over 24, it's only a third. What are you? Who are you in the
Yeah.
other 16? Okay, for 8 hours you should sleep. I understand, but for the rest of the time,
Yeah. Yeah.
who are you? You're not just your job.
Absolutely. And coming back to that wonderful phrase you use, that words are our world. So in your work, how do you introduce that sort of very subtle shift in language so that people can not break but understand, as you say, that the impact and the use of energy and
Mm-hmm.
the hyper focus that's making them overlook those other aspects of their world that are just so important and that are potentially suffering because of that sort of
I
fixation.
think the most powerful one is the should.
Yeah.
I should be doing this. I should do this. I should do.
Tell
Woulda,
me more.
woulda, coulda.
Tell me more. Yeah, go on.
Is the most common one. And I always ask, I'm a bit, of course, as we all know, coaching is supporting people in their transformation, but it's also not only a mirror, but a challenge in a good way. So
Yeah.
whenever I hear this, I always let them end their question, their sentence, or whatever it is, and then just go, you should, or do you want to? Even just this, then they go like, hmm, hmm, maybe I don't want to, but I should because, and then there's a lot of, conditioning from society, from family,
Absolutely.
from,
Yeah.
the position you're in, which I totally understand. But even just questioning, you should or do you want to? In all the languages, it works. I mean, in French, it's the same, in Italian as
Yeah.
well. So it's not difficult to do that. And it's always met with silence, which is the most powerful thing that you can see, that you can witness in a coaching conversation, right? So when this
Absolutely.
happens, they go, and even when I receive, because of course I was also in their shoes. When I received that question from my first coach, I was like, ah, yeah, okay, never thought about that. And then start.
Yeah. And I love what you've sort of began to pull out there again. The shoulds are those looking sideways, those glances of this is actually someone else's story that I have been
Yes.
following or choosing to believe is my
Yeah.
story. I'm doing these things because, as you say, society suggests that we should do things like I need to do well at school, I need to go to university,
Yeah.
I need to get the proper job, and then get the
Yes.
mortgage, and then how. So in that silence, which, as you say, it's so powerful,
Yeah.
and also scary because it is that sort of
Oh yeah.
that honest realization, is it, that perhaps you've been following someone else's path. What's your first step towards making somebody feel okay about that realization and accepting that okay, we can now see what work might need to be done?
In case it's a realization, in case they realize that they're following someone else's path, there's one journey, let's say, that we use, which is that just realizing, going back to their roots and really going to the core of what their passions are and what are the typical magical questions. Either the magic wand, if you had a magic wand, what would you do in your life if money and time were not an issue? These kind of questions, of course. But also to really see what one of the questions that I love is, what do you do that makes time fly? There's
Yeah,
something that you do in your life, you don't even realize that the time is passing by. And you're sitting for, I don't know, 2 3 hours doing something, and you don't realize that the time has passed. That's a big hint towards what your passion is.
yeah,
And this is what I realized even in my life. Like, when I, at some point, I remember it was the last year. At some point, I was basically thinking about how I was spending my time. And I was wondering, before becoming a coach, what was I doing in my free time? I had my 9 to 5. I was meeting friends. I was traveling, still things that I do as well right now. But then what was I doing? I'm not a big fan of series, so I was not watching TV or anything like that. So it was like, let me remember. And I realized that I would spend every single moment of my free time without friends, job, or traveling, reading or studying or watching videos of psychology or personal development. And I have been doing that for the past 15 years. So once I realized that, like, okay, so now that this has become my job, it is sometimes a little bit difficult to just put a boundary, be like, okay, you probably have worked 12 hours today. You probably can just stop, right? But this is the typical thing that happens when you're actually working with your passion. But that was the realizing that I already had a very visible passion in my life, just didn't realize it. I just didn't have the time and the space to sit and say, okay, if this job is not my passion, is there anything else that I'm already doing where time flies and I don't realize it that can become something that I can be paid for in this case, or I can keep doing. I mean, you don't have necessarily. I'm a little bit controversial sometimes in these kind of things. I say that if you want, absolutely go follow your passion and make it into your job. You can also, and it's completely legitimate, not do that, have a normal job, quote unquote, and still follow your passions in another way. It all depends on your life. It all depends on what you have in terms of what I call them the life constraints. I have no kid. I'm single. So in case, but this is what I could do. Other people might not have the same life situation that can bring them to do this kind of big jump that I did. But no matter your life situation, don't put them on the side. And there's always something that you want to do and you're compelled that you, again, as I said, time flies when you do that. And I'm not talking about watching TV, of course. I'm talking about doing something, you know.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's
yeah,
the kind of thing. But this is when it happens when some clients realize they've been living the life of someone else. Sometimes it's because of what they've done in their life, although it's something that they wanted, although it's not someone else's life, but they really wanted to do, I don't know, to do a kind of job and be someone for 10, 15 years. But it's also legitimate to just change your mind and just want to do something else for the next 10, 15 years. So not necessarily is a should that comes from the outside. Sometimes it's so interiorized. I don't know if that word exists in English, but
yeah,
it's
yeah,
so innate in you that
yeah,
you realize maybe I'm just locking myself in because I've been doing, again, the sunk cost fallacy. I've been doing this for so long that I don't want to abandon it. Although I loved it and I still love it, but I'm called to do something else. Although I'm not living someone else's life. So in different stages of life, you can be, I wouldn't say a different person. You're kind of always the same person, but you can put your energy into different things. And still, you're still you. Your career story, but in general, your story, your life, your journey is always the same. This is what I tell the people, like the clients who come to me with 6 different CVs for 6 different applications that they can do because they are all of it. But and then they add, but I'm nothing. And I'm like, what do you mean you're not nothing? Oh, because I'm not specializing in one thing. And I go, so what? So I'm not appetite, but not able to find a job because of that. That's the question that a lot of them have. And they think that the fact that they have multiple experiences and
mm,
passion, that's actually a weak point. When it's actually the other way around. It's your strength. And you will see, this is one part of the job that I do with some of the clients. There's always a red thread throughout all your career experiences and all your life. I found it in my own. I wanted to become a psychologist when I was 18. Like I had 3 options: psychology, languages, or political science. I ended up doing political science for, again, life constraints. So I couldn't do psychology and I couldn't do languages. But then I kept those 3 passions alive in a way. That's why I speak 5.5 languages. And I then came back in a way to psychology recently. Well, not so recently anymore, but anyway, later in life.
yeah, yeah.
So there's a red thread. And I've always been, someone called me the a cheap psychology for my friend, a psychologist for my friend, for all my friends.
Yeah.
And still I kept them all alive. And I was, as I said, for 15 years spending my time reading and studying psychology. So in a way, there's always been this support, help to my friends, the people around me, my colleagues, that was always there. This is just one example in my life, but I've seen clients, and I cannot, of course, go too much into details, but
No.
the moment they see the red thread in their life, then everything is clear. And their applications are also way more accurate in a way and clear, and in a way proud and brave, although there are words that carry a little bit of heavy meaning, right? But they go to an interview, to a job interview, and they go confident because they, even if they know that the outcome might be 50-50, either they get a job or not.
Mhm.
And it's not under their control. They cannot control the outcome, right? So they focus only on what they can do. They prepare well, they get there with the attitude of confidence of being, this is a dance. I want this job as much as you want me or not. So it's not me begging you for a job. It's also you asking me to give you 40, 50, whatever, hopefully not 50, but I mean 8 hours a day for 5 days of my life and my energy. So as much as you decide on me in a way, I also decide on you. Even just this shift then prepares them to be way more confident. And for those who have multiple experiences, as I did, they also come and they arrive to the interview with a confidence and an aura that says, this is who I am. And now that I know the story, now that I know why I've done all these things, why I've done multiple, why am I a generalist? David Epstein has wrote a whole book about this range, right? So, and now we can see with AI, everybody could be an expert. So what makes you different is not, you can be an expert, and I'm very happy if you are, of course, but what can make you different is also the capacity, what they call soft skills, which is a horrible way to say it, but all those capacities, all those skills that can make you a fast learner, for example, if you need to learn something very quick with AI, in this case, for example, thank God we have it for some things, but also the capacity of seeing the bigger picture, for example. All these other skills are way more important right now. Anyway, so I'm going too much into details on that, but that's the kind
No,
of
no,
shifts.
no. Thank you. It's fascinating. I mean, there's an awful lot of things sort of rattling around my head in terms of little sort of threads that I want to sort of tease out of everything you said. Obviously, you mentioned the word controversial quite early on in terms of the
Yeah.
people say you should niche, just focus on one thing, have that clarity, have that specificity, and not kind of be the generalist. I think the point you make, which is really interesting and entirely valid, is that as humans we have multiple skill sets, multiple facets to what make us who we are, and it is sort of the combination of those ingredients that make us special.
Exactly.
So there's no sort of expand on there's no sort of point in saying, or there's no value in saying, Danny is a career coach and consultant. That's very niche. But Danny is a career coach and consultant working in 5 languages. The psychology element. There's and also you've mentioned the travel. You've mentioned the entire story of your life has made you the particular career coach and consultant that you are.
Yeah.
And leaning into all of those different elements of your story in your, and I'm going to be narrow here, in your social media and your marketing and the way you talk about yourself, or this way you show up in a room,
Yeah.
is what makes you attractive to the right sort of people who need that kind of career coaching and specialism. So I love all this. I love it, everything you said, because it's a very refreshing way of saying you should be the generalist, but the actual niche, the actual thing that makes you unique to everyone else, is you. It's your story. It's those
Yeah.
multiple lenses that make you who you are. So,
And you can change.
And you could change.
That's the
Absolutely.
thing that I find, for me, fascinating. I've had, probably haven't told this story yet, but I've had friends who fought because one said to the other, "You've changed and I don't like it." And the other one replied, "Well, I take it as a compliment."
Yeah.
Because change is the only thing that is constant in life.
Yeah.
So if we are, I don't think we can be the same as 20 years ago. And
No.
of course, I mean, we're not, without talking about philosophy from ancient Greek times, but you never bathe in the same river twice, right? That's what, right. So that's the point. You're constantly changing, and you can. The permission to change not always be the same. It's a scary one,
Yeah.
but it's so liberating because then you realize I'm not constrained by what I've done in the past or what society tells me to do, right? And so I can, if I want. You don't necessarily have to, but if you want, you can. Even if for 10 years you do a specific kind of job, and then for the next 10 years you do another one, you can.
And how? So in that moment, where you've got someone stood in front of you who has that uncertainty, has those mind monkeys, is feeling something of a discomfort around where they're at, and they are looking to change, and they are, as you rightly say, scared of shifting into that other lens, that sort of that other version of themselves that's always been there. And of course, they have that huge body of evidence, that entire life
Yeah.
story of skill, experience, value, worth. How do you remind them and help them lean into sort of habitually celebrating that story in order to make it easier for them to make that shift?
Well, I use the metaphor of navigation, of course, as I usually do. But if you want to know, I mean, if you know, even if you know where you want to go, let's assume you want to go to London. I always use a different city,
Yeah,
depending on the person I talk to. So in your case, it will be London. Even if you know where you want to go, and some people do not know. I didn't know at the beginning when I jumped on coaching, and I had no idea what I was doing. And then the more you do, the more you realize where you want to go. But even if you know, I want to go to London, right? If you're starting your journey from Glasgow or from Dublin, it's a completely different journey
yeah, lovely.
in terms
Yeah,
of directions, in terms of what you need to take. It's a flight or a train or whatever it is, right?
yeah,
So if you
yeah,
don't know that, how the hell can you know how to get there? Even if you know already where you want to go.
yeah,
So the first step is always to know ourselves better. And most of the times, which is might sound surprising, we do not know ourselves enough.
no,
And that's the work that, of course, a coach can help you do, and a psychologist as well. But in my case, in the career, of course, a coach helps you wonderfully in order to do that. And that's already the first step, because that already alone gives you the confidence of being like, okay, so I'm actually not that bad. I've said this, and I've actually said this to myself so many times in order to remember I am good enough. And I mean, you know what I'm talking about. I mean, you wrote an entire book about it. So that's the point. That always is the first step. That's why in my journey, I mean, the program that I do with my clients, there's always the first part. Who are you? Not what you do, but who you are. Again, as I said at the beginning, right? So the difference between I am a doctor and I work in a hospital for because you are something else as well, a bunch of other things. So that's always the first. That alone, I've seen people change already completely their attitude, even physically, coming to my office and be like little, like, yeah, I don't know, yeah,
yeah,
and then just being way more comfortable, even in just how they were sitting. That already is a big shift. And then we work on that. And we work, okay, what are your values? What are your strengths? What are the points where you can, I mean, the typical leaky guy, right? So what do you love to do? What you can be paid for? What the work needs? What you know that you can do? And then we combine those things and we see what you can do, what you want to do, not only what you can. There's a bunch of things that we can do, but not necessarily we want to do them all, right? So those hesitations at the beginning are most of the time they will never disappear completely. Again, an example of that, but they are tamed in a way just by realizing who we are completely and being more confident in what we can do, even if we do not have the skills right now. Some of my clients, they wanted to do something that they had no skills for, but they knew that they could just invest X amount of time. I don't remember if it was 6 months or a bit more, to invest time and money, because they could, in learning those skills. That were the things that they realized. But before doing the work together, they thought, oh, it's going to be impossible. Well, maybe you just need time and money to invest, and then you will be. And then they changed. They changed completely their job. Not career, but job, but still. So once you know who you are, automatically those monkeys are a little bit less whispering in your ears. And you're confident about everything you can do. Most of the times, we need first a mirror, which is in my case, of course, it's me in terms of my career coach. But I always support my clients in asking their people around, their relation, like the closest friends or their relatives or their spouses. Most of the times, people around us see what we are, what we're capable of doing, what
Yeah.
happens with us. I will never forget, and I think this is the first time I say it publicly. I've said probably only private conversation. So breaking news. But there's one thing that I will never forget that my ex-partner told me. When your friends, I think the sentence was something like, your friends are drinking everything you say. Like, what do you mean? Like, they follow whatever you say in a way that you don't really realize. Like, what are you talking about? You're a natural leader. That's what I'm telling you. And I was like, you're saying bullshit. Sorry, my French. And then later on, I realized, well, maybe actually my partner was right. Because then I realized, and I looked around and I asked people around me, and then they were like, well, yeah, you're a source of inspiration. I was like, yeah. So even I had to go through this,
Yeah.
and that helped. So ask around you, and then you'll see. And then that's going to be already a first step to when you see yourself through the eyes of your closest friends or relatives or spouse, then you'll see. There was this amazing, that was an advertisement, a little campaign of a company that I will not name that was doing this kind of thing where people were describing themselves physically, and an artist was drawing them without looking at them, just by the
Yeah.
description. And then they were drawing the same person based on the description of someone else, the closest people, and then comparing the two drawings. And the one of the self description was not as beautiful in a way as the one of the description of someone else.
Yeah.
And the focus was on specific things. In that case, was of course physical appearance, right? But this can apply, of course, also in the rest. And most of the times, we're blind to our own strengths and skills, and we never think
Yeah.
about that. That's the most common comment I receive at the beginning of our program. Oh, I never thought about that. Because we're used to describe our skills for job interviews, but we're actually never really describing them fully and do a
No.
complete assessment of who we are completely. That's always the question that I ask. That's always the answer that I get. So for a second, I lost you. So I was like, wait, what happened?
That's okay.
But
You blipped, but that's fine. You're still here. It's good.
so that's
It's a
that is the thing.
yeah, but I mean, like you're again. It comes back to like you say, those multifacets, those multiple lenses um, that make us who we are. And I mean, the story about the sort of the two drawings is so powerful because again, I've seen this time and time again. You've got a sort of a group of people around the room, and everyone's so quick to be sort of disparaging about themselves, but they would never speak about the person in front of them the way they have that kind of self-talk.
Oh yeah,
And you'll have kind of leaders in a room, and someone will lean across the table and say, "Oh yeah, but you're so good at this. I wish I could be more like you." Going back to the sort of the good enough and the comparisonitis and the
absolutely.
so on and so forth. We see the best in others because, again, coming back to the mind monkeys, we have that sort of inner voice saying, "If only we were a bit more like them, then we'd
Hmm.
be okay." But we are. Again, like you say, we have all these different strengths and experiences and values, and that. I mean, the baseline at which we kind of hold our own value is often so much lower than the truth. And that's why the sort of the conversations that you're having, and again, the sort of the realizations you're eliciting out of those people in front of you are just so powerful and so important.
And you may actually reminded me of one other thing very briefly, because I see that so the time is passing. But there was one thing that I realized in myself, but also realizing in clients, was sometimes stuck with the self definition, like definition of ourselves, that is applicable only to our past self.
Yeah.
We say I am something or I cannot do something, but it's actually sort of leftover of a description of ourselves, of a person that we're not anymore. I'm going to be more explicit with an example. Last year, at some point, I mentioned to a colleague, I was doing a course, and I mentioned to a colleague, oh, I'm a shy person, like this person that we were talking about. And she like looked at me and was like, you a shy person? Are you crazy? Like, no, yeah, I mean, I've seen you in class, and I would definitely not use shy as an adjective for you. And I realized, yeah, okay, I was like raising my hand every day in class. I was talking, maybe not the whole time, luckily, but I mean, I was definitely not a shy person in class. So, of course, she knew only a part of me. And I was maybe talking about the whole of myself, but I also realized I was actually talking about myself in the past. I'm a shy person. That's always been the description of me. I was always the one in the background working behind the screen, behind the stage, you know. And then I realized that I was shifting, and my body had already shifted, and how I was presenting myself in the world, but not my self definition, not my self description.
Yeah.
And the moment you update that, then there's an alignment between your description, your mind, and your body, and then you can do wonders. And that happened as well with other clients.
100%. Yeah, that's. I mean, I could not agree with that more. Again, we are so easily caught up in the decisions that we made for ourselves
Yeah.
a lifetime ago that we carry forward, and until someone points it out or until we do that hard work ourselves to revisit that perspective, appreciate that it no longer serves us, that it's telling a story that simply isn't true anymore, and introduce that new point of view. I mean, that's when the sort of the real shift happens, as you say. Subtly, things could already be happening, but it's not until you let go of that historic narrative that really the sort of the change will stick. I think. So we are
the word.
almost yes.
Change that sticks. That's the
Change
one.
that sticks.
Because you can change the furniture of your room, but if you don't change your apartment, that's not going to be. That's just going to be a cosmetic change, not a rude change.
Totally. And I mean that's the difference between a lot of sort of the sort of historic, very light touch open question coaching that we see, that encourages people to just go out there and do it and you'll be fine, and we'll work on your time management and we'll work on your all those kind of light things that make a very brief difference, but then don't actually dig into or resolve the bigger mind monkey, essentially the bigger belief. Again, as we both said, is
it's a difference between change and a transition. I'm using, of course, William Bridges' words, but
lovely.
Change can be cosmetic, and a transition is way more profound, way deeper in a way.
100%. So I'm going to finish by just bringing you back to something that you said to me back in the autumn. And I think it could be a nice place to wrap up, because in terms of all the work that you do and how you bring people's sort of new lives, new directions together, embracing all those different facets of their personality and their story. You said to me that one of your goals, you will focus on what gives you pleasure, meaning, and purpose. So, Danny, my final question to you is, what gives you pleasure, meaning, and purpose?
As cheeky as it can sound, is my work, the job that I'm doing with people, support that I give to people. That's the reason why I left my job, previous one, and that's why I jumped onto a new completed career, because I was looking for this. I liked my life before, but now I love it.
Wow.
And every day is better and better. And then I'll close it with this. One of my best friends recently asked me, when was the best period of your life? And I jokingly, but not really jokingly, said, "Today is the best day of my life." And as cheeky as it sounds, I know and I feel it. And the moment I say it, I always laugh. But at the same time, I know that I've had years and days when my happiness has done big jumps. But every day there's a little bit more, even if it's not as big of a jump. And so I know that 2016 was one of the best years of my life, but still, nothing compares to the fact that where I am right now, in terms of my confidence, in terms of what I know that I can do and what I want to do and how I feel with myself, even in the worst situations, under missiles and drones, I can still kind of be calm and zen, and just because I've done the work. And this can happen. So back to your question, it is exactly this kind of work that I do, that I did on myself first, and I help people to do on themselves.
Thank you, Danny. And I think just to sort of round off that point, as you say, doing the work on yourself really exacerbates that value, that power, that the whole point of examining your inner story, embracing those monkeys, having that conversation, reflecting back and saying, I deserve better. What does that look like for me? What can I do to make today the best day of my life, knowing that tomorrow could be better still?
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time. Where can all these wonderful people who've been listening into our conversation, where can they find you? Tell us about you. So I've got your website, which is harbourchange.com.
Yes.
And of course, you're on LinkedIn, but leave us with something exciting. Why should they immediately jump off of this and get into your DMs and hit you up and get to know you better? Come on, what are you working on?
Well, I'm expanding, as I said earlier, with some of the clients to help them write their career story, to understand that there's always a red thread between everything they've done in their life. And also, I'm currently expanding more of what I said a couple of times to my clients. There's always a reason behind everything you do. And I know that you know this sentence as well. There's always a reason behind everything you do in your life. And it's always the best reason behind every your decision, based on the information that you have, the feelings, and the tools that you have at the moment. So even things that we think they are mistakes, they're actually lessons for the future. So I'm expanding on this a bit more and helping people not only in the program that I have, which has 6 sessions in order to change either something in your job or change completely your job or career, but also a bit more expanding on. So you mentioned harbourchange.com. That's my website, on LinkedIn as well. If you're in Brussels, send me a message. I love doing this kind of work, not online, but in person. So I focus a lot on people who work in the institutions in Brussels, or everything around them, or everyone who works in Brussels. So I prefer face-to-face is always better. I wish, for example, this conversation we could have done in presence, but I'll come to the UK sooner than later. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time today, Danny. I really appreciate it. It's been wonderful to chat to you, as it always is. Thank you to everyone who has tuned in. I hope you've enjoyed it. Well, I haven't seen any comments. I'm just going to quickly scour the chat, but I think
Chats are always, yeah.
There we go.
It's always complicated to see the
that's okay. People have actually been tuning in, so that's lovely. So we know it worked. We know and people can always watch it back. That's exciting.
And I hope everyone brought bananas with them today, because I was what we wanted. I told you I would have brought it, and you didn't bring your own bananas.
I didn't bring my own bananas. No.
No pun intended.
That's it. Well, now I'm looking sideways and thinking, oh, if only I was good enough to bring my own bananas.
Exactly.
On that note, we shall leave it there.
Anyway,
thank you again, my friend.
Thank you.
We'll be back with Mind Monkeys next month. I think it's Friday, 10th of April, 10 a.m. UK, again with an amazing guest, but I'm going to tease that for now and announce it on LinkedIn shortly after. But once again, you're a superstar, my friend. Thank you again. Thank you, everyone who tuned in, and we will speak again soon, I'm sure.